his nickname was Rabbit. He was a Naval Academy graduate, played football for the Naval Academy, and he graciously asked me to come over there and spend 15 days with him as I relieved him of command of the ship. Where he went on to, he was a nuclear power guy, went on to be the commanding officer of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and then made 1 star and then retired. A wonderful guy, and just suddenly dropped dead. Found him in his basement. He was working on a CD player trying to get it to play again. So you just never know when things are going to happen. And he was a 1969 graduate of the Naval Academy, so he was a couple of years ahead of me. I was a 1972 graduate from the University of Virginia. So I want to say a special prayer for him and some other families that this week I saw on television. We had 2 tragic losses. A young man was killed at Norfolk State University, and also a mother made a tragic mistake and left her child and the puppy, a puppy, in the car, and it left them there for 6 hours. I don't know how you do that, and killed those 2, the puppy and the child, and it's just a shame. And there's some other deaths that have gone on this week, but I want to say that special prayer to God for their souls. So please join me, if you would, tonight in this prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to ask that you embrace the souls of those that have just gotten into your kingdom, particularly the 2 children and the young man who was killed at Norfolk State University, and of course my friend Rabbit Christensen. We ask that you embrace them as they come into your kingdom for the final tour, for their final tour of duty up there with you on your staff, and particularly Rabbit's going to serve on your staff there in heaven. We know the streets are guarded by Marines, but Rabbit still liked them anyway. So we ask that you take care of them and all the other families that have had tragic losses in this week. We ask you to be with the families and embrace the souls of those that come to you. We ask this graciously in your name, and help the people of Ukraine gain back their country. Give us the knowledge that we can help them and help them get back into the membership of nations as a whole country, and not parceled out with destruction from the Russians. In your gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I also want to mention that Nick Nichols, pray for her. She's having surgery on the 20th of September. She'll be in Maryview Hospital. Okay. Also, we're doing the 50-50 tonight. If anybody wants to help participate in that, it's 1 for $1 and
6 for
6 for 5.
And
right?
we're also,
and we have a book.
so there'll be 2
besides
drawings,
mine.
so don't throw away your ticket.
Okay.
The book is COVID-19 and the Global Predators.
Okay. What else was I going to say? Oh, if you haven't already renewed your membership, please renew. They were due in July. Yeah. Right, and we have our shirts. They're in. We have girls, women and men's sizes. So make sure you get the right one. All right. So. All right, so we will start off with our speaker tonight. We are honored to have John Gorham. He's the Director of Communications with the National Right to Work Committee, and they are a 2.8 million member organization. They're dedicated to fighting compulsory unionism. He's worked in Colorado, Montana, Kentucky, New Hampshire, and Virginia to advance workers' freedom. And he's here tonight. They have an office now in Smithfield, right?
Working remotely in Smithfield.
work remotely in Smithfield. The last time we had somebody out, it was Mark Mix, who came all the way out from Springfield, but now they have a closer thing. So if you all give a round of applause, and please keep your questions to the end, and I would like to ask. Have that.
Thank you guys for having me here tonight. So I'm here to talk with you about collective bargaining, which is what they are trying to do here in Virginia Beach for the city board. Oh,
Mike?
Yeah.
Hi, so my name is John Gorham. No?
No. Push it up, all the way up.
Now?
No.
All the way up. Testing, 1, 2.
All right, thank you guys for having me there. Sorry about that. My name's John Gorham. I'm with the National Right to Work Committee. I'm here to talk with you about collective bargaining, which is what the city of Virginia Beach is trying to do. So for a long time here in Virginia, collective bargaining for public employees was banned by law. Doug Wilder signed a collective bargaining law, ban into law in 1993. And then after the Democrats took power after the 2019 elections, they repealed that law. So now here in Virginia, local workers outside of the Commonwealth's attorney's offices and the sheriff's offices can be unionized. And this is a terrible deal for taxpayers. It drives up the cost for everyone, and don't take my word for it. Just look at the states where this has happened, like California and Illinois. It has been an absolute disaster for them. So I've got a quote for you here from Beto O'Rourke when he was on the city council of El Paso before he ran for Congress. And he said, quote, "From my experience these last 6 years on city council, I do not think it is in the community's best interest, certainly not the taxpayers' best interest, to have collective bargaining for police and firefighters." So this was something that was even a bridge too far for Beto O'Rourke at one time. If they're able to unionize the public employees in this city, you're going to have massive administrative costs with administering the collective bargaining contract. One figure I saw said it was going to cost about $700,000 to the taxpayers of Virginia Beach to pay for administering the union contract. But I think, as we all know, with government, everything always comes in much, much higher than what they project. You could be looking at over $1 million to administer a union contract if the public employees are unionized here in Virginia Beach. We've seen in other municipalities in Virginia, Loudoun County, Arlington, they have to hire 6 or 7 people just to administer the union contract that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and creates an entire new layer of bureaucracy that does nothing to improve the workplace for the workers and does nothing to help the taxpayers. The big winners in this are going to be the union bosses and the money that they're able to rake in from workers. So a good little case study here is in the 2010-2011 fiscal year, the city of Miami was coming out of the depths of the Great Recession, and they faced a $140 million deficit on the $500 million budget for the city, which led it to declare a financial emergency and try and change the contract that they had with their police union. The police union bosses sued, claimed the city had failed to raise taxes, lay off non-union employees, and put in traffic cameras to raise revenue. And they were ultimately able to win because the Florida Supreme Court agreed with them and threw out the city's changes. So when the rubber meets the road, the next time that there's a recession and you have unionized public employees, they're going to be the ones that take priority in the city budget. whether they need to be the ones that are cut or not. So years ago, the Heritage Foundation found that government union monopoly bargaining contracts for state and local workers adds about $3,000 to the tax burden of each family of four in the state that adopts it. So this is a terrible, terrible deal for the city of Virginia Beach. So what can you guys do to fight it? Now, collective bargaining at the city level is inside baseball. The only likely side that the city council and the mayor are hearing on that are the unions. It's up to people like you to let your city council members know and let the mayor know that this is a bad deal for taxpayers and to kill any attempt to unionize the public employees. Ultimately, I know the goal for the GOP this year is if we can get to 51 seats in the House of Delegates and 20 seats, hopefully 21 in the Senate, we can get a collective bargaining ban back in place in Virginia. Last session in the General Assembly, they passed through the House with every Republican voting in favor of it, a bill to put the collective bargaining ban back in place. But because Democrats are in control of the Senate, it died. So if we can get a majority up there, that we can put the genie back in the bottle. If that doesn't happen, I mean, hopefully we can beat it here in Virginia Beach, but it's going to be an ongoing problem throughout the state of Virginia until we're able to get a monopoly bargaining ban back in place. So thank you guys. Happy to take any questions.
I have a question. Well, what happens to the people that have already accepted collective bargaining? You know, there, because it's like
Right.
individual cities.
So if the monopoly or the collective bargaining ban went back into place, the contract would still be valid, like in terms of the wages, the benefits, but the union wouldn't be able to negotiate or represent on behalf of the workers.
Okay, well, anybody have questions?
I got one.
Okay, Andy and then Dan. Okay, Andy?
Yeah, public employees contributing to the people that they're gonna negotiate with is bad, but how did you come up with it'll cost this much to administer that? I mean, the people, does it take public employees' time and their salary? How did you do that?
So the cost of administering the contract is, you have to hire administrators to run the union contract. So if there is a dispute, say with an employee and the city, well, now you have a union official that represents them in a grievance process.
But don't we have that administrator already, and are you saying we have to pay for that union person to represent
Yes.
them?
Yeah, yeah, that's why this is a disaster. Yeah, no, you're.
Well, I'm glad we're making it clear.
Yeah, no, you're bringing in a whole new layer of administration into city government just to, because it's a legally binding contract, and then to administer it, you've got government bureaucrats that are handling things like the grievance process, making sure that the city's complying with the contract. Depending on how big the municipality is, I know cities like Chicago, they have to pay for lawyers that are just full-time on retainer to deal with issues surrounding their union contracts.
Right. Dan?
So we had a pretty good brief at the Libertarian breakfast by John Moss on collective bargaining. I'm very unfamiliar with it. I'm a military guy, so there's no collective bargaining. You're totally new. But he brought up a point that when you have a collective bargain, there is a person usually that's responsible. And I might be wrong, but in this case, it's the city council that's responsible for the collective bargaining agreement with their employees. And he said the difficulty would be if there's an issue, you have, instead of one person, you have a body that's responsible for this. So part of what you're saying, the $700,000 to $1 million, that's the layer below it. But it all filters up to, if it happens in Virginia Beach, to the city council. So to make decisions on whatever, the collective bargaining, higher wage, it goes to that whole body to make the decision versus one responsible individual?
Yeah, so when they get the contract in place, the unions will send in negotiators to negotiate with the city. And the city will have to hire a legal team to be able to hammer out the details.
And then they would go back to the whole city council and say that
Yeah,
this is what
they
we
would take,
hammered
they would
out.
take the contract to both sides to get approval for it.
So you get all, however many city councilmen and the mayor
Right.
to make that one collective decision?
Yeah, to go up or down on the contract, yeah.
And school teachers aren't included, it's just the people that work in the city of Virginia Beach.
No, it's, the teachers' union can also go to the school board and ask for collective
So that
bargaining.
You can do that all separate.
It will be separate. The firefighters have asked
Yeah.
for it, the
So
police
it-
officers have asked for it,
opens up
waste management has asked for
Pandora's
it,
box
that'll all be
for all-
separate.
It opens up Pandora's box for all these different groups, unions, to try to get a collective bargaining agreement with whoever their bosses are, I guess.
Right,
Thank
Toby, and then, Robert, and then Al.
You mentioned that we pay for the rep. Who decides on how much they're getting paid?
The city council of Virginia Beach.
Based on what?
Well, actually, it would be who's ever designated to do the negotiating, and then city council
Right.
would get the final
So,
vote.
yeah, no, so city council would hire, you would have to hire administrators. What it pays on, I think, is determined by maybe the cost of living in the area. I'm not quite sure what they base that off of, but it's been, at least the municipalities that have been unionized so far in Virginia, extremely expensive.
Oh, really? Which ones have been unionized?
Loudoun County, Arlington, Prince William, I think recently they got the school districts, some of the school districts out west, like Montgomery County.
Okay, Robert?
Well, just a little background of our own here in Norfolk, Virginia. We had one of the finest, most productive F-150 plants in the nation in Norfolk. And it closed down, it shut down in 2007. And when it shut down, the average hourly wage for the Ford factory workers was $26 an hour. When you added in the benefits, it drove it up to $69 an hour. And every F-150 that went out the door, $5,000 of the sticker were employee benefits. You cannot afford this. The taxpayer can't afford it. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to this city, I'm telling you.
Okay. Oh, that was a statement, not a question. Al, and then
Glad you
Duke.
understood that. Thank you very much.
How friendly is the mayor to this concept of changing policy?
You know, that, I am not entirely sure off the top of my head. I've heard he's at least entertaining it, but I'm sure the people here are more knowledgeable about that than me on that specific issue.
Okay, Bill, and then Nick.
So the one advantage that accrued to collective bargaining, if I'm not mistaken, is that the workers can't strike. Is that correct?
That's in law right
Well,
now, but
That's
that can
actually-
be changed.
That's actually a great point. It's in law, the Virginia law that was passed says that it is illegal for them to strike. Well, if you guys remember back to Wisconsin and Scott Walker, it was illegal for people to strike in Wisconsin, and they went ahead and did it anyway.
It was illegal and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
And didn't our waste management department come to work, but didn't pick up trash for a week because they weren't getting the $1,000 bonus that public safety people were getting during COVID?
Yeah, work
Remember that,
slowdowns,
and the
sick
trash stayed on the
calls,
street?
sick
Yeah.
calls.
Yeah, just today I saw
Wasn't
in,
considered a strike.
Clark County, Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is, they had to close a number of their schools in their school districts because the teachers union people were calling off sick illegally, and a federal judge had to come in and tell them, you have to go back to work, this is a legal strike.
So does it take Ronald Reagan to correct that situation?
Yeah,
It takes some guts, so.
every state, it says it's illegal, but they always find a way around it.
Yeah, so Nick and then Teresa, and
So
then Maureen.
Do their collective bargaining contracts like just totally negate the Right to Work Act, like, and everything that's in there? Because can't we still, because we're a right to work?
So how does right to work
Yeah,
work
yeah.
with collective bargaining?
Right, so Virginia's a right to work state for now, so you don't have to pay union dues as a condition of employment to get or keep a job. What happens is collective bargaining undermines right to work laws. Now, these people here in Virginia Beach likely have not been unionized or worked a unionized job before in the public sector.
They have unions, what they have is like, the police officers have a
Right.
fraternity or something like that. A benevolent society, and the teachers do
Right.
belong to the union, even though the union can't collective bargaining for them.
Yeah, the relation, when they can represent you in the contract negotiations, the relationship changes. So now, if you don't have the collective bargaining, you really don't have to deal with the teachers' union. Collective bargaining comes in, they are the exclusive person that represents you in negotiations with the school board over pay, benefits, the whole 9 yards. You have no choice but to deal with
In
them.
the case of the school board, the teachers.
Yeah, it was Teresa's turn. Teresa, go ahead.
Okay, we all know that even like with the United Way that is in the school system, that no, you don't have to, but you do, unless you specifically refuse to. And so with the collective bargaining and the dues that are collected, just like United Way, how many of them are able to be contributed and are contributed to political organizations such as the Democratic Party?
It's tough to put a specific number on that, but a significant amount of that money is going to be flowing into Democratic campaigns.
For example, $2 million was used by the unions in the last election. $2 million. Sorry, Maureen, and then you.
Okay, so, usually, in a collective bargaining thing, and I'll just use the schools as an example, when they do raises, they do a percentage of raises.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same percent. So like in the education system, you want the teachers to get a raise, but all those administrators sitting in that building down there that do absolutely freaking nothing and are making all this money, they get that percentage of a raise too. So it's really not fair in order to, you can't separate out and say, well, the superintendent's already making $300,000 now, and, you can't give the teachers a raise without giving him a raise. It just isn't fair, because the higher paid do-nothings are getting bigger raises because it's a percentage than the
Yeah.
people who are doing all the work.
I mean, a lot of times you'll see the argument in favor of collective bargaining from the unions and big labor politicians is that, oh, it's good for workers. It'll help with employee retention. Well, you could just give that money directly to the employees. You don't have to bring in a union to do that, which is, I think, a good point there.
Right, but superintendents, they have a contract, so
Yeah.
they get that. So Dan, and then Laura, and then back over there.
But Maureen brought up a great point, that's kind of what I was gonna say. Because the teachers' union, they're only 8% of all the teachers are part of the teachers' union. So if they are represented by the president of that teachers' union for collective bargaining, then the other 92% will get the same raise, I would assume. But right now, it's like all of them, when the school board did the last raise, 2 raises, all of them got it. So in collective bargaining, would it only be those 8%?
Would it only be those in the union, or
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah, it would apply to the people across the union.
Yeah, so that's how the other workers would get ostracized. We're working for you and you're not paying dues, so you
also
need
have
to
to
join
look at
us. Yeah, so Laura, you were next, you had a question?
Yeah, when you mentioned right to work versus unions, I think an important distinction that people don't understand is, in a right to work state, you can still have unions, you're just not required to join them.
Right. Yeah, yeah, you can still have
It's a
unions here
misconception.
in Virginia, you're just not forced to pay the dues. Now, the problem with collective bargaining, that we've seen in other states is it's legal to lie. So what unions will do is,
It's what, I'm sorry?
it's legal to lie.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
So a lot of people are not super engaged politically, they've got a couple kids, they've got a lot going on in their lives, and the unions can go up to them and say, hey, you have to pay these dues, they don't know what their rights are. We had a Supreme Court decision in 2017, the Janus decision, that brought right to work to the public sector across the entire country, which was a great victory, but then you see states like California that are dominated by teachers' unions coming up with all sorts of obstacles to keep people in the unions. They don't tell people their rights under the Janus decision. They come up with ridiculous opt-out periods. There was one teachers' union in California that you could leave the union, but it was only for 2 hours on the 4th of July. It was the one day a year that you could opt out of the union.
I guess it matters what's in the contract. Because I know in my state of New York, there was a contract for the employees for 3 years, right? And when we had a downturn, right, even though they negotiated, trying to lower the pay and not give them those raises and everything, because it was in the contract, the union wouldn't let it go through, and we almost went bankrupt. We had to be bailed out by the federal government. Bill?
You said something that surprised me, really, and I'd like you to go into it a little bit further. I'm used to the idea that there's a union and there's like the employer, and the union collects dues and hires somebody to represent them. And then there are volunteer, like shop stewards.
No, they're
But
not volunteers.
in collective bargaining, did you say that if a bunch of city employees in a garbage bin, for example, if they decide on collective bargaining, that the city has to hire a competent person to represent them? Is that correct?
Well, it's to administer the contract and all the things that go into it. So they'll have people from the union that represent them in grievance hearings. So now your entire kind of HR department is going back and forth between the union and the city. It's written into the contract, it's heavily regulated, and that's what really starts to eat into the cost of doing all that. It's not as informal as it used to be, where you can just have a talk with the manager. Now, anytime that you are dealing with the employees, you have a union representative there, and you have somebody on the administrative team that makes sure that you're following this long legal contract that you've signed with the city employees to the letter of the law.
So it kind of ramps up HR expenses to
Those-
manage.
Those union
Carol.
stewards that you say are volunteers, they are not volunteers. They are paid between $38,000 and $43,000 on top of their regular pay to be in those shops every year. Now, you take the number of shops that we have in the city of Virginia Beach and start counting your money. So when you take the number of shops, add that to the salaries that you're gonna have to pay out of your taxes, and now you got some bucks flowing. So they're not volunteers.
So the union reps negotiate a contract with specific people from the city, and then it would go before city council to say yay or nay, or is city council required to be in the negotiations?
Well,
Or is that something they
so
negotiate ahead of time?
that's generally how it works. One of the other big problems with union contracts is a lot of the negotiations go on behind closed doors. Depending on how they set it up, there's states like California where they'll go in with the union officials and the public has no idea what's going on. They just come out one day and say, this is the contract that we've signed. The taxpayers of Los Angeles, California, you have to pay up.
Wow. Okay, Bill?
I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you have data that would summarize for me, like, what more expense this would represent for a city like Virginia Beach if it were to go from right to work to collective bargaining for all of its many employees?
Yeah, so I had earlier that for the $3,000 figure, I don't have any others that are specific to Virginia Beach, but I'm sure if you gave me a minute, I could probably dig up some others.
And the $3,000 figure was what, sir?
So the Heritage Foundation found that collective bargaining for state and local workers adds about $3,000 per year to the tax burden of a family of 4 in each state that adopts it.
Wow.
Wow, that is a lot of money.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Teresa?
I just have a problem because it seems to be concerned with all the government workers, which, you know, the government, I don't like the idea that there's some group in between the worker and the taxpayer that, we already have city council that votes yes to every tax increase, so, no matter what party they are, but we have, now you have this thing called collective bargaining in between. The taxpayer just is sitting around going, what are they gonna do to me? And has little say about what they're going to be paying their employees. And they are the employees. We don't owe them nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, is now you have this third party that enters the equation that
It's
you.
just to make government richer, it looks like to me.
Yeah. And one of the other problems they have is benefits, right? They run up benefits because that's not something that you see. So they run up like the retirement and stuff like that, which they did, I remember in New Jersey, when the governor there was telling the firefighters and stuff, we don't have the money to pay this. And they were all pissed off, and he's like, I don't know why you're yelling at me. I didn't negotiate these contracts. I'm just telling you, there's not the money there to do this. You know,
Yeah, that's
The workers don't care.
New York, California, New Jersey, Illinois, all these states are going broke from their public employees' pensions because if they can't promise you a raise, they can always promise you a longer and more generous retirement, and they're not going to be around to face the consequences of making financial commitments they can't keep.
give you more time off, you know, all that kind of stuff. So okay, Bill, go ahead.
Well, there's one other, thank you. There's one other thing that we don't really think about too often, and that is in a more informal and relaxed situation, an employer can identify a really good employee and give that man or woman a raise, right? And give him more responsibility. I wager that under a collective bargaining agreement, that would be very hard to do.
Yeah, it's one size fits all in seniority. I mean, that's what killed the American auto industry, is you couldn't promote or give bonuses to good people. You had to treat everyone the same, no matter what they did at work.
Yeah.
Way to go to try and fire somebody that's in a union.
Right, I read something where the police officer that killed Floyd, right, had a history of that kind of problem, and they never could get rid of him, so bad employees are hard to get rid of.
New York City, they have empty school buildings that they call rubber rooms, where they put the teachers in that they can't fire.
Yeah,
They don't want
and
them
they
in
just sit
classrooms
around all day
anymore.
and train.
They can't get rid of them, so they send them off there.
Yeah,
And they pay them.
yeah. Or they pass them around from one district to another, and then it becomes somebody else's problem.
And that shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't, right? So your organization helps people that have problems with unions already?
Yeah, so we've got two sides to our organization. One's the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, which represents people that are having their rights abused by the unions. Takes them to court. Then the other side of it is the National Right to Work Committee, which I work for, which tries to educate and mobilize folks against forced unionism.
Okay, so, go ahead, Teresa.
I was just gonna ask, do you have people, like when we have our city council meetings, that can actually come and do some testimony on, because I'm thinking, what, these cities that get collective bargaining and unions, what happens to them? If they've obviously not run well to start with, and then they get collective bargaining, they just become too inexpensive to live in and go down here, kind of like Chicago and all those places. what it does to cities?
I mean, it's location dependent, it's certainly not gonna make things better.
Also.
Okay, let Larry go and then I'll close Carol.
Not a question, but just a statement. When I was in grad school, studying management, industrial engineering, stuff like that, one of the things that we studied was the ultimate union was the Soviet Union. The ultimate union. Everyone was part of the union, whether you were a party member or not. So if you were a factory worker, you had a quota. You had to produce 5 widgets every day. It didn't matter what you did, you were not allowed. If you tried to produce more, your fellow employees would come down on you because now you're making them look bad. And what was the point? Because you weren't going to make more money. The Soviet economy was already tanking because they had no productivity. But the Politburo finally came up with this brilliant idea that if you produce 5 widgets for your regular salary, if you produce 6 or 7, they would pay you extra for those extra widgets that you built. Sounds like capitalism to me, but the unions don't work. They have outlived their usefulness in this country by getting too damn political.
Okay, Carol?
One of the ways that you're gonna take a look at things like this is to look at the people who are self-employed, small businesses who can't afford union wages. You're gonna find the disparity. You have union wages, a large majority of union wages in an area. This up here, small businesses down here, everybody's gonna want the union wages. You won't find people down here. The housing market won't be able to survive because the wages will be up here and everybody's gonna want to build these. We won't be able to live down here. And that's what causes a lot of havoc.
Wow. You have anything to add on that?
No, I would just recommend, definitely contact the mayor, the city council, let them know this is a bad deal, get in their ear. I mean, likely they're not getting a whole lot of pushback from anybody on this, and they're hoping that everybody's asleep at the switch and they can get away with it.
No, I've written to them several times. In fact, I volunteered to be on the collective bargaining task force. I'm waiting for them to appoint people on it, but 2 of the council people said they were gonna support me to be on it, hopefully. So Bill and then Toby.
Regardless of their possibly leftist leanings, it's such an easy out for the city council to go ahead and accept collective bargaining as the norm.
And then they could blame somebody else. It wasn't my fault, it was the union.
Well, all the Republicans, you don't push it off like that.
All right, Toby?
Who came up with this idea?
The unions, that's been around forever.
The unions have been lobbying the General Assembly for years, and they finally got, Democrat control under Northam, and they passed a law that that public employees can collective bargain by asking their local city or school board to approve it. So it has to be approved by either city council, or if it's school board, or if it's your board of supervisors. But they have so many days after a group petitions them to have collective bargaining to do something about it.
Do the people have any say?
Apparently, all we get is the bill on everything, but, they'll probably, hopefully, they'll have some public hearings on it, and they have that task force that, like, I volunteered to be on. Hopefully other people will. Carol?
Yeah, unions do have some good to them. They do have some laws that are very good when it comes down to health and safety on the workplace. They do make laws that make sense, especially if you work in places that have really things that can hurt you. Things like working on high-skilled places and places that are very dirty where you can have a lot of things go wrong. They have a lot of safety features. That's where union law can come into place. But you don't have to have that if you have people who care about what happens to their people.
Right.
You can make common sense places,
Yeah.
decisions.
I don't know of any employee that's, you know, come to city council and said, well, we
We
need
gotta
to have like,
right.
you
That's
know,
the only
body
thing I
worn
can think of
cameras
that
or
they
something
would
like
do.
that, that didn't get that approved,
Well,
yeah.
First of all, unions don't make laws, they make rules, regulations.
Right.
All right, but the history of unions in this country, 100 years ago, or maybe 120 years ago, the country was run by what today in Russia is called the oligarchs. You had Ford and what's his name, the steel industry. Carnegie, and all those big multi-billionaires that owned everything. But there was no safety concern, you're absolutely right.
That's what
The
it's.
unions finally came in, got a foothold, and they created all those safety concerns.
That's right.
But once all the safety concerns and then the health and welfare concerns are done, now they want political power.
That's
All
all.
right, and that's where, like I said before, the unions have outlived their usefulness in this country. The health and safety is there, it's not going to go away, but they need to get out of politics.
I agree.
Teresa?
I was gonna ask a question, if you have a union, let's say with the teachers, and collective bargaining goes through and they get paid all this money, you know, because each student already costs about $16,000 a student. So let's say people, and they're pulling their kids out now, so you have a whole bunch of people that pull out of the public school system. Are those teachers, like, if there's no place for them to teach, are they let go, or do they remain there because they belong to the union?
Depends on the contract. I mean, they could keep them, they could, depending on how they set it up, be forced to keep them on, whether they need them or not.
Yeah, somebody brought up the taxpayer. Did they ever have any, like, civilians on these collective bargaining things, or is it just lawyers and public employees?
Yeah, it's from what I mean now, maybe there's an exception to the rule, but from what I've seen, it's all inside baseball, insider types that are going and doing all of this. The taxpayer, the average citizen's getting the cold shoulder.
Right. Do you have any, like, any pamphlets or anything like that list all of the points that we could bring up?
Or a website.
Or, yeah, they have a website.
Yeah, we have a website. I was gonna bring pamphlets, but my printer couldn't get them back to me in time. I can email them to you.
Okay,
If you'd like one, I could send one
yeah.
over to
send-
you.
Right, I could put it in the newsletter and you can download it to your computer, bring them to next meeting, whatever.
Your
Russ
website?
Robert?
Yeah, we it's nrtw.org.
John?
nrtw.org.
That's good sound. On September 10th, the Petersburg School Board reversed themselves, and they allowed collective bargaining, but there was a caveat which stated, the resolution does not allow teachers the ability to negotiate their wages or benefits, limiting the scope of negotiation to hours and scheduling, health and safety, and work rules. So they put limits on it, and of course, as we all know, the cities and localities are not under any law at all to approve any of these. For many of the departments, health, safety, whatever it is in the city council doesn't have to approve it. But they will try to leverage that to get reelected, saying, here's what I gave you, as they always do,
Yeah.
especially with the Teachers Association.
Right, so any contract would be negotiated every year, and then that could be changed every year depending on who's in office, and since they're getting dues from the employees and using it for campaigns to try and get the people in office that'll give them what they want, so they get to hire their own bosses. You know, so, but who represents us?
And Diana, when you mentioned us, there are going to only be two organizations here in this city that will oppose this initiative. That's the Virginia Beach Tea Party and the TLP. Republicans are going to take their hands off, and Democrats, they'll love it, they'll fall in love with the whole thing.
Well, I don't know about that. Somebody told me that city committee was bringing that up.
Well, I don't know about that either, because
You mean to tell me they will vote on this, to oppose it?
Wait a minute,
Here's
wait a
what-
minute. Dan?
So I wasn't in attendance at the meeting, but I did get a full debrief on it from a reliable source, that they are pushing collective bargaining and ranked choice voting to January.
They're pushing a vote on it, or
Yes,
they're
they're pushing a vote on it till January. So,
Secretly is.
so to answer
Such
your
a
question, they're not doing anything about it now.
Gotcha.
That's it. I mean, Kenny and Laura, you were all there, I mean, that's basically what
I was
happened,
there.
right?
I was there, and to be honest with you, most people don't even understand it.
Right.
I understand it because my father was a union steward. So I speak from knowledge.
I understand it. I've been in the union. I've also been in non-union shops, and I've been a scab too. Cross the union line, you don't take care of.
Good girl.
I was in the nursing profession. I wasn't going to let all those patients not get taken care of because they were out there.
Well, you know, I think, like I said, at one point in life, my father was a lot young, I mean, I'm a lot younger than my father. At one point in life, there was a need. To me, I fight better than most people. I'd rather me fight than somebody else fights.
Right, right.
That's exactly what I said.
Okay, yeah, Teresa?
Just a little note is, even now, there's a lack of common sense. Let's say I, who had a teaching license, say I got my license, even at my age, and I said, you know, I don't need to make any money, I don't need health insurance, I wanna help my city save money. I love teaching, I want a classroom. You give me a classroom nearby where I live, so it doesn't cost me a lot of gas. I'm willing to work for $20,000-$25,000 a year, that's all I want. With a union, I would be told no, correct?
She would, correct.
Right, you would have to get the same wages as everybody
That's a
else.
lack of common sense.
Right. Right. There was something else I was gonna bring up and it just completely went out of my head, right? Anyway, there's a meeting tomorrow at the, it's Saturday. The mayor, the vice mayor, and John Moss are gonna be on a panel discussion. You can ask them all about collective bargaining and any other issues, and that'll be at Mom's Kitchen at 9 a.m. Saturday morning, right? I was gonna say.
Saturday.
Yes.
And what is this panel you're talking about?
It's a discussion on issues facing the city, so there are several issues that we would like to bring up to them, and one is collective bargaining, right? What was some of the other issues, Robert, do you remember?
Yeah, I've got them. Go ahead and give them
Right,
a moment.
and then, after they discuss these issues that we brought up, then we'll let them, special elections was another one. And then, when they get done speaking on those issues, then we'll get questions from the audience on issues that they want to discuss.
So it's a streaming service that you're utilizing?
No,
No, it's live.
it'll be live, it'll be Facebook Live, and it'll be at Mom's Kitchen, so you
It's the
can,
TLP meeting.
at the TLP meeting at 9 a.m. Yes, Teresa?
I was gonna ask, with your organization, are you able to address people like teachers, to a group of teachers and that, and tell them how it's going to affect them? Because I'm sure there's a negative effect, number one, the cost of where they live, things like that.
Well, generally we don't do kind of direct action like that, but I know there are other groups out there that are more in the directly working with public employees and letting them know what the consequences of unionization are going to be, or helping them get out of the union in some cases.
Yeah. Do you have any statistics on, once a union's in place, does productivity go up or down, or, service to the customer up or down? Any kind of statistics on what happens before and after, anything like that?
Hard statistics off the top of my head, no, but I think just looking at observationally, just looking at the Midwest, most of the steel industry, manufacturing was unionized there. It's all gone now. It moved to either overseas or right to work states in the South.
Wow.
Down.
Right.
Wow.
It goes down.
Any other
It's bad
questions?
for business.
There's no incentive to do a good job.
Right,
Because you get paid
because
what
you get the same as everybody else.
Right.
Yes, Andy?
I love National Right to Work, thank you, but could you give us the name of one of those other organizations that talks to employees that maybe we can engage or?
Yeah, I don't have one in Virginia off the top of my head, but I will look around and dig one up for you guys.
Thank you.
If you want to know about productivity, look at all the factory jobs that have gone out of the country.
That's what he just said.
Yep, they're
So it's
gone.
very bad for business in Virginia, we need business in
It's
Virginia.
expensive country.
Right, yeah. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you so much for
Thank
coming,
you.
and we look forward to getting our feedback. Okay, so now we will entertain candidates that want to come up and speak, and we have two here, Nicholas and Mike. Okay, so Nick, you want to go first?
Doesn't matter.
You done yet?
I brought some notes this time so I don't just ramble.
Okay.
Most of the times I just ramble. Oh, there we
Drop your
another.
thing.
That's my turning point pin. They're very nice to me.
Okay, so, you know, give a minute or whatever, or speech,
Alright.
whatever, and then
No speech.
answer questions, whatever.
All right, y'all know I'm all about a third-party solution to all of this. I believe our two-party system's broken. It fills the whole electorate with just empty suits and puppets pulling a red or blue rope, and it needs to stop.